Hey, what's up? Welcome back to the channel. And recently, Stephen A. Smith went on the Full Send podcast and he did an interview. And of course, they went ahead and mentioned Kwame Brown. He had a few things to say regarding Kwame's interview and things that he released on the Pivot podcast when he went on there 2 or 3 weeks ago. So I'm going to play what Stephen A. said, and then I'll play an excerpt from Kwame Brown's response. And I'm sharing based on fair use.
You have been better than Kwame Brown.
No, I'm not going to disrespect Kwame Brown like that.
Sorry.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's cool. It's cool. Kwame Brown, listen, I'm very guarded in what I say about him because I've seen some of his videos.
True.
And clearly is real personal with him. It was never personal with me. I just looked at his game and called it like I saw it. Now, if you remember, you got these infamous videos of me going off.
It's
guys,
hilarious, man, but you know it.
But guys, but wait a minute. Fellas, that was 14, 15 years ago. I'm saying I didn't know that this society was going to evolve to a point where 14, 15 years later, you got guys throwing it in his face and he doing interviews talking about how scarred he is and blaming me for labeling him. I didn't do that.
Right. No, you actually are
No,
right.
he was on the pivot with my boys Ryan Clark and Crowder and Taylor. And he's like, you talk about endorsement deals and I cost him that. I'm like, what? Like, nah, I didn't do that. They were saying this about you years before I ever opened my mouth. Yeah. But when you at the top of the heap, which I am at this particular moment in time doing what I do for First Take, people are gonna label it like that because First Take's been number one for 11 years.
Yeah, why does that beef? I mean, you can't squash that beef.
No, I mean, I'm not trying to start nor squash anything. I got a job to do. If I knew it was gonna be like that, I wouldn't have done it like that. But I did say what I meant at the time. I meant the shit. Okay?
Yeah, you explained it, yeah.
And so it's like, I'm not trying to hurt him. I mean, listen, man, look, here's how I view it all. I wish him nothing but the best. I hope he, his family, everybody good, and he lives his life. And if I knew it was going to be like this, I'd have never done it. Fair enough. Correction. But I will tell you this. My job is to call the game of basketball how I see it. Call sports how I see it. Okay?
Yeah.
He is not the first person that I've criticized. He won't be the last. I've been criticized. You got a whole bunch of people out here doing debate shows, podcasts, solo shows, all that. People ain't saying shit about them.
Again, that was an excerpt from the Full Send podcast where Stephen A. did an interview and he mentioned some things about Kwame. There was more there, so you can go watch it on their YouTube channel. And now I'm going to play an excerpt from Kwame's response to this video.
Stephen A. Ballhead Weasel. See, you allege that you didn't know it was what you were doing was wrong. And if you had to do it over again, you would do it different. Well, Stephen A., that's a flat out lie. Because, we all have been at this for about 2 years, Stephen A. And there's a video of Jalen Rose trying to tell you, right, like the day that you were auditioning for the job. Because although you talk about how good your ratings is now and whatnot, you didn't have ratings before you started doing this comedic, disrespectful type of style. So you want to double down in this interview as if what I'm saying has no validity, right? And I'm going to do this without cursing you out. I'm going to do this without any of that. Because I'm going to have Etan Thomas come back on my show. And we're going to have the GMs that come on and that listen to the garbage that you spill. And we're going to have them really break down the effects of the media and how they sway public opinion. And public opinion plays a large part in athletes signing or whoever is hot and who's not. We all know this. So for this guy to sit up here and act like that, that's BS. And we're going to be able to put you on video, Stephen A. Because what it is they put these beta male dudes like you. You're no different than one of those weak-ass cops that got picked on in high school. And then all of a sudden they gave you a badge, which is your microphone. And now you get a chance to talk. And you have a hatred for everybody that plays, except the ones you can be a fanboy to. See, you're not a fan of the game because you don't know how to play the game. See, it's interesting that you talk about a sport that you didn't exceed at. You didn't succeed at this sport. Your excuse is that you cracked your knee. See, Stephen A., the reason why they probably brought a guy like you along and taught you how to say big words and sound like an auntie and never respect black men, because my name is Kwame Brown, Stephen A. And even in that interview that you claimed that you was being respectful and you want me to be so good and my family to be so good, you still call me Kwame Brown. You made it famous to not even say my name. I think they got you so much money. I think they pay you so much money because they jealous of the fact that a black man from the hood broke every barrier that you can think of. If you go look up every psychiatrist and ask them, what is the trajectory from a kid, one of 8, next to last, from a divorced woman in the projects or in the hood, what travel of life, what path of life do you think is going to happen for this young man? And I can guarantee you it wasn't no number 1 draft pick. So, Stephen A., you are afraid of guys like me.
Well, there you have both perspectives. Stephen A. Smith basically saying he would do things differently if he could. He didn't realize that bus word and everything that he said would stick with Kwame the way that it has. Kwame saying, yes, you did. You know what I'm saying? You knew what you were doing. And even just a year ago, Stephen A. Smith had, or maybe a year and a half at this point, had put out another blooper reel and tried to do the same thing he had done previously to Kwame. He didn't come out and apologize then or say he would do anything different. He just did the same thing. But I think as he's seen, Kwame is still online and he's still doing interviews, and he's mentioned what him being labeled a bust, what that has done in his life, or how he feels that it has impacted his life. Maybe Stephen A. Smith is beginning to think about that and think about, well, dang, I didn't realize it would stick so long or it would be a problem. And Stephen A.'s mind, he was trying to climb the corporate ladder. He was trying to make a name for himself and distinguish himself from other sportscasters, which he has done that. So we can call him names and we can talk about the things that he says, but he did achieve whatever goals he set for himself. And he is, I guess, the best at what he does. But we can definitely argue the fact that you've done that at the expense of other black men, that he routinely goes off on black men. Now, I understand with the sports that he typically talks about, football and basketball, they're dominated by black players. However, when another player that's not black gets involved in some terrible things or some sort of criminal activity, the wrath of Stephen A. is much shorter, and it's not as loud, it's not as aggressive. He goes over the facts of whatever information he has, and then they talk about it a day or two, and then they go on to the next. These white players get to go on and live their lives and do well and be gone. But when Stephen A. gets his grips on a black player, they get called all kind of names. They're not worth a box of cereal, how he said about Andrew Wiggins. And thank God Andrew Wiggins had turned it around and started playing great. But if he had, his play didn't excel to the level that it has, then people would have been saying mean things and derogatory things to Andrew Wiggins for God knows how long. People still referring to Kwame as a bust. And like he pointed out on the Pivot podcast, who is checking for a bust to represent their brand? Unless they're going to do something that's going to be at his expense, not wanting to be a bust like Kwame Brown. And then he makes an ass of himself. But it's a way to critique a player's game. I would expect, if you're a sportscaster, somebody's playing bad, talk about the game. Yeah, he missed this or that. He's not holding up. He's not doing well for the team. They may want to trade him. His game is not very good. You know what I'm saying? There's ways to say things without degrading a human being and saying that they're not worth anything. They're worthless. He's a bust. He's a scrub. He's this or that, because they set the bar on the TV, and then their fans, when they see these players out in public or they get an opportunity to talk about them, they're saying these things to these people and their families, and being the child of a person they've labeled a scrub or a bust. Oh, y'all, I know your dad. Your dad is a bust, or your dad is a scrub. That goes beyond just that player. It goes down to the children as well. When these men are the top, 450 players or 425, I forgot how much it is, how many NBA players there are in the league. There's a small amount of players. So for anybody to make it there and last with a career, say what you want, you know what I'm saying? But they are still the best of the best regardless. Now, when you get two of the best players in the United States and you put them against each other, well, maybe one doesn't look as great as they do back home. But in the end, they're still better than other people. So I'm glad when the guy tried to be funny and asked, oh, Stephen A., you'd have been better than Kwame Brown, knowing that he nor Stephen A. could have beat Kwame Brown while he was playing. It's just the little disrespect like that continues to linger on after some of these sportscasters go in on them. It's a way to critique the game without critiquing a person or a human being and making them seem less than. And I think that's what Kwame tries to say, is they're not just critiquing his play. They're not just critiquing these players' game. They're critiquing the player. They're putting the stigma on the player themselves. Calling what Russell Westbrook, Skip was calling him Russell Westbrook, changing up these players' names, calling them out of their name and saying they're not worth anything. That's the problem. And Stuart Scott, everybody, even the players, loved Stuart Scott back in the day, and he wasn't demeaning players. He made his own lane by doing his own way, but it wasn't a derogatory way, it wasn't a demeaning way, and people loved him. And we hated to see that he passed and that he was even sick. So, there's different ways to go about it. Stephen A. chose his way, and a lot of people like it. But when you stand back and look at it, the way he does black players and the way he does white players is just not the same. He doesn't go in on people. He's been going on Kyrie. What white player has he gone in like that? He made a big deal about Kyrie and the shot. He made a big deal about that, but when it turned out old boy from Green Bay didn't take the shot either, and he even seemed like he misled people, there wasn't the same amount of smoke. I can definitely understand why Kwame would not be cool with the way Stephen A. handled him and how the way he handles these players. And I'm glad that he found his voice and was able to stand up against it and speak about it. Let me know what you think in the comment section. Make sure you hit that like button before you go. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Until next time, peace.